So, budget day has been and gone. It's all over by the shouting, and the shouting so far is relatively muted because the budget wasn't ultimately that big a deal. Although the headline figure of 26 billion of additional taxes being raised sounded quite a lot, when you get into the detail, you realize that all that money is being raised over the next 5 years, and most of it won't materialize until 2029, 2030, and who knows where we'll be then. Well, then it's not such an exciting situation in terms of what's going to happen next year. And actually, that enormous, so relatively enormous figure of 26 billion pounds, it's a small part of the government's total budget, of course, but it's also worth looking at it in the context of some other numbers that we looked at before. So here is this image of the profits that the big four UK banks gave back to their shareholders in 2023. And that's the big blue circle on the outside. The white circles in the middle show different amounts of government spending from about 1 million up to about 6 billion. But it's still essentially all about this big number here, 24 billion of profits shared with shareholders. And that's only a part of the profits. This year, the banks are going to make about 50 billion of profits. So that's in 1 year. 26 billion of tax over 5 years doesn't seem so big in that context. And then, of course, the figure of 55 billion pounds that we have here, the money that the English water companies have paid to their shareholders between 2019, well, back to 1989 when the companies were sold. And that's the amount of money that the government got when the companies were sold, and that was only a few billion. So the sort of figures that are in play in the economy are pretty enormous, and the government's 26 billion over 5 years, as I say, seems fairly small. And if we think about that in terms of government borrowing, because that in a sense is the big story here, government having to pay £100 billion a year of interest on its borrowing, which is a huge part of its budget. Well, where's all that money gone? This gives you a bit of a picture, because this is a picture of the government giving money away. It took in a few billion when it sold the water companies. This 55 billion plus a lot more since then, plus all the interest that the companies have paid on their borrowing, that's probably 80 or 90 billion in total. That's money the government has given away. It's money the government could have had if it had kept ownership of the water companies, fundamentally. And similarly with the banks managed to give away all this money to their shareholders, making money, or at least not making money, but extracting money by lending money at interest, which they can only do because the government allows them to do that.